and Art is your expert.
Thank you,
Art.
Lindy. Just want to make sure, yes, I think everybody can hear me. So I just wanted to reiterate what Lindy just said, which is a big thank you to the Policy Advisory Board. They are promoting many, many great ideas for change inside of the United States government, and I'm really proud of the work that we're doing, as Lindy said, in conjunction with a lot of different partners. The second thing I wanted to say, and Lindy would not say this herself, but I wanted to put in a plug for Lindy's recently published book called Trust Me. Deserves an applause. And I guarantee you that it is chock full of dozens upon dozens of facts that you did not know about the clearance process in the United States today. In fact, as I was telling Lindy, I filled out my very first application when I was 22 years old. It was 2 pages. It was generated by a typewriter. And I went through the process again about 6 months ago for a TS clearance, and it clocked in over 100 pages. And I guarantee you it was not the drugs and criminal activity sections. So it is a completely different world today, and Lindy breaks down all of the mechanisms, all of the details, all of the kind of the why behind the scenes, why the government asks for the information that it does. And to my knowledge, it's the only book of its kind that does that. So as indicated here, I am the CEO of DHI Group. So DHI Group is the holding company for both Dice and ClearanceJobs. And what I like to do during my speech to the Connect conference each year is to share some of the data that we're seeing on the Dice side of things. Just to put things in perspective, Dice consists of about 6.2 million candidates. They're mostly tech professionals, if not all tech professionals in the United States. It's been around for a total of 35 years, so for a third of a century now. We have approximately 4,500 clients on Dice, including staffing agencies like Robert Half and Kforce and Adecco, but also companies as diverse as Disney and also Ford Motor Company and Geico. And most people think of Dice as being a platform that caters to Amazon and Meta and Google. And we have those customers, but actually the real brilliance of Dice is that it allows for technology professionals to see all of the jobs across many different industries in the United States. That compares to ClearanceJobs, which today consists of 1.8 million candidates and about 1,900 different clients on the platform. I would say that the great thing about these communities is that they do operate to a certain extent in parallel. So we do surveys of the candidates and also of the recruiters for each community almost continuously. And so what I'm going to share today are thoughts about the current trends in technology recruiting that we're seeing on the Dice side, so that hopefully you can apply them to your practice in finding cleared professionals that might be tech talent. So let me see if I can make this work. So one of the things that I'm going to address in part of my speech are the trends that we're seeing associated with AI-related hiring. And so a lot of my investors, a lot of my friends that are not that familiar with the technology community ask whether or not AI is a fad, whether or not it's the equivalent of the metaverse or the blockchain or NFTs, because they've seen these technology trends from afar and they also seen them die. And I can assure you that the data is pointing exactly opposite, that AI is here to stay for sure. And this chart that you're seeing is from a report that was published by Mary Meeker called Trends Artificial Intelligence Report, published in May of this year. Mary Meeker was arguably the most important analyst in the internet era. So she started writing an internet trends report in the year 2000. And people were amazed at the fact that it generally popped out every year and was about 100 pages. So it was pretty voluminous. Now her trend, or the reports that she published from 2000 to 2019 and then just stopped. So this year, 6 years later, she comes up with this report that clocks in at 340 pages. Now, it's a very, very big report, but it is dense packed, chock full of information about the AI trends that exist today. One of the trends that you can see here is the growth of ChatGPT, which is one of the generative AI models that was created by OpenAI. So you can see that everything is a hockey stick. The number of users, the number of subscribers, the amount of revenue. OpenAI generated $4 billion of revenue at the end of last year. That was their run rate. They are going to clock in at $12 billion of revenue this year. So they're continuously growing, and it's probably arguably the most important, or at least the most recognized generative AI model. But just to suffice to say, AI is growing very rapidly right now. This graphic comes from our Dice July 2025 jobs report. And so just for reference, the Dice platform puts out a new quarterly report every single quarter. This is the last report that was issued. And this particular graphic shows the incidence of AI skills inside of our job postings from the beginning of 2024 through June of 2025. And what you can see is that we start at the beginning of 2024 with about 10% of our jobs requiring an AI skill, a single AI skill. And by the June timeframe of this year, it's 38%. I can tell you that in September, right now, it's 40%. So almost half of the job postings on Dice require an AI skill. Now, AI skills are kind of an interesting paradigm themselves. AI is an umbrella term for a variety of skills. We use a taxonomy that includes 366 distinct skills that are under the umbrella term of AI. But as you can see, the incidence on Dice is growing very rapidly. Now, here is an interesting depiction, and it comes from a different report called the Dice 2025 AI Hiring Playbook that shows the categories that are actually hiring for AI-related skills. Number one category is consulting. You can see January through May of this year, 27,000 job postings for consulting. Why is that the case? It's because anytime there's a major technology upheaval, a major shift in a trend in technology, it's generally the Fortune 1000 companies that hire the very large consultants and say, what does this mean to my business model? How do we apply this new technology to our business? So that's the reason why you see names like Deloitte and Accenture and IBM on this list of the top hiring firms in the United States that are seeking AI qualified individuals. The second tier is software and technology. Why? Because they live and breathe technology change. They accept it all day long and they embrace it very quickly. They're the early adopters. The third tier, as you can see, is retail, finance, and manufacturing. And that's because they have realized that AI can radically change and automate their workflows very efficiently. So let's go on to talk about the nature of who they are hiring. Last year, if you looked at the jobs that were posted on Dice, you'd see a lot of requests for people that actually did very foundational work on large language models. They were super scientists in AI. They knew neural language processing. They knew machine learning. There were a lot of requests also, which have kind of dried up, for people that were prompt engineers. This year, what is being requested is what is called an AI orchestrator. An AI orchestrator is a person that can bridge the gap between these large language models or the small language models and the business processes that they attach to. So they are the bridge. And that's the reason why you can see of the listing of those jobs that have extraordinary growth rates, you see consultant and analyst. Those are the people that are essentially being hired today because they are applying AI in a practical way to the businesses that are requesting them. So here is a really interesting view into the types of people that are being hired, and I'm going to read this specifically so that people can see it. So this was a job posting that I actually took from the Dice site a few weeks back, and it is a posting for a Gen AI adoption manager in Charlotte, North Carolina. So what they're looking for is 10 plus years of professional experience, including at least 2 to 3 years of hands-on experiencing delivering Gen AI use cases with measurable business impact. That's an interesting requirement because Gen AI in the form of at least OpenAI has only been around for a little bit over 2 years. So 10 years of practical experience, 2 to 3 years with Gen AI. Proven track record of implementing at least 3 to 4 real-world Gen AI solutions using diverse technology stacks. Solid understanding of Gen AI development frameworks, LLM APIs, prompt engineering, and orchestration pipelines. Strong knowledge of the AI ML lifecycle from use case intake through deployment and monitoring. Preferred qualifications. Familiarity with leading Gen AI platforms and tools, including AWS Bedrock, LangChain, LangGraph, and other orchestration frameworks. Experience in enterprise environments and working across multiple business functions. This is a person that has been around in business for quite some time, is an engineering professional, and has been taking a deep dive in AI over the last 2 years. So what is happening to the incidence of hiring in the United States for the technology world? Well, what we're seeing is that there is a growth in the number of jobs for very senior professionals. You can see 6 to 9 years of experience, 10 plus years of experience, and there's been a deficit in hiring for people that have 0 to 2 years of experience. Why? Because those people that are 0 to 2 years of experience, they haven't lived through those business processes that are being asked to be AI enabled. If you're a comp sci graduate just coming out of school in May of this year, you don't know how to automate a marketing workflow. So that's what's happening right now, and you can see it in the news articles that are coming out about the technology industry. And the bottom line is that there's also a belief that some of the early coding processes or the more junior coding processes that can be automated completely by AI tools today. But as we know, the only way you become a senior engineer is by being a junior engineer first. So last thing to say, there is this undercurrent of job displacement due to AI. And this is a study that was conducted by McKinsey, and I think it was in 2023. It indicates that the world is automating job processes continuously. So they believe that by the virtue of the incidence of AI and generative AI specifically, they estimate that all job activities, working hours, will be automated at a rate of 30% by the year 2030. But that's up from 21% that would have naturally occurred without generative AI. So there are a lot of distinct trends that are happening associated with what we see on the Dice side for the incidence of hiring for AI professionals. Now I'd like to take the second part of my briefing and really turn around and talk about the use of AI in recruitment itself and how candidates are responding to that. So we did a survey of candidates in June through July of this year on Dice. And as a result of that survey, we published this report, which is called the Trust Gap in Tech Hiring 2025. The bottom line is that the statistics that come out of that report are pretty compelling. And the headlines are that 80% of tech professionals trust fully human-driven hiring processes, whereas only 46% trust hybrid AI plus human processes, and then only 14% actually trust AI fully driven recruiting processes. And so what we're seeing as a result of this survey, which is a number of different questions, roughly about 50, that transparency and communication gaps are being created by the use of AI in the hiring process. And if you think about it, the technology community has gone through a lot of rough years recently, with tech layoffs, specifically at the end of 2022 and into 2023. There's economic uncertainty. There's the fear of technology professionals that AI is coming for your job because some of these coding tools are very, very accomplished. And so the use of AI inside of the recruitment process itself is actually probably pushing away the people you most want to hire. So There are some additional compelling statistics that come out of this same report. Specifically, 63% of tech professionals worry that AI favor keywords over real qualifications. 63% fear it rejects qualified candidates who don't fit a narrow criteria. And 56% believe no human ever sees their resume, which is that's pretty profound. So what has that meant? It has meant that the community, at least the technology community in the United States, believes that deception may be the only way that they get a shot of getting a job in the United States. And authenticity actually becomes a liability in their process. They also believe that bias is being introduced by the use of AI in hiring and recruiting. There's a Brookings Institution report that was just recently published this summer that looked at the use of AI screening tools, and it took two cohorts of equally qualified candidates, one with black associated names and one with white associated names. The tools only matched the same way 6.3% of the time, and they preferred white associated candidates 85% of the time. That should be a shocking statistic to every single person in this room, that kind of bias is introduced by many of these tools. So, what are the candidates doing to respond? We asked them very direct questions saying, in this environment, what are you doing as a result of the use of AI in hiring processes? So the number one answer that came back from 45% of respondents is that they are actually tailoring their resumes for keywords. And our survey indicated that 92% of tech professionals agree that AI screening tools miss qualified candidates who do not optimize for keywords. And a staggering 78% of the respondents to the survey feel that AI tools in hiring pressure them to exaggerate their qualifications just so that they get noticed. One candidate even said, I use a software whose name is commonly misspelled. If I don't misspell the software name on my resume, AI won't recognize that I have that experience. So, the second response mechanism is the volume game. They are increasing the volume of their applications. And we're seeing that dramatically on Dice. I can tell you that the number of applies that we've seen per job posting has roughly doubled from 2024 to 2025. And so there are multiple tools that allow a candidate to register or apply to multiple jobs simultaneously with the click of a button. The third response mechanism, implemented by roughly 19% of the candidates that were surveyed, is the use of the tools to go end-to-end on the process of applying and then scheduling an interview. And I love this quote that comes out. I completely rely on AI tools for the entire application process. Often I won't know anything about the positions I'm applying for until I've scheduled an interview. This is the equivalent of the candidate saying, how about if you have your agent talk to my agent? The fourth mechanism that we see that is being established, at least with the Dice community, for 19% of respondents, they have given up on applications altogether. One of the statistics that's very concerning that comes out of the survey itself is that roughly 30% of tech professionals are considering leaving the industry altogether because of the dismal experience that they're having in the hiring process today. 14% says that they are actively looking to get out of the industry, and 15% say that they are seriously considering an exit but haven't taken any specific actions just yet. The final approach that many candidates are taking, at least 12%, is that they're going back to old school techniques, networking. They're just saying, we're not going to apply, and it's all about who you know, not the application process itself. In fact, it was kind of funny. I was boarding a plane for Washington, D.C. from Denver yesterday, and one of the flight attendants said, the only way that you can get a job in this economy is by knowing someone. So I personally think that all of this comes back to a central thesis that one of the important ways that you could really differentiate yourself in this environment with these AI hiring tools is to add human touch. It's more important than ever. So with that, I believe that I have a couple minutes for Q&A. Is that right, Lindy? So I'll wrap it up there. And if anybody is interested, all those reports are absolutely online on the Dice site. You can go and get them. But there's additional sources that I cited, like Mary Meeker's report that you could easily find with a Google search. Any questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the distrust of AI must be high across tech professionals, but what do you think about cleared professionals? Are they even more? Do they trust them more or do they trust them less?
We have not done that survey. I think we should do that survey to understand their sentiment. But given that we have the same kind of skill sets involved and the same kind of like just general knowledge of the technology community and folks that have a clearance but have friends that are in the technology community that don't have a clearance, I think you get to the same basic answers. I do believe that. Now, what's interesting is that ClearanceJobs, in terms of the AI incidents in the job postings themselves, are lagging behind Dice. So I told you that 40% of job postings require an AI skill on Dice. That number is still about 10% for ClearanceJobs. So it is lagging a little bit, and I would say that just in general, the government and government work generally follows the industry by a few years. Great question, though. Thank you. Additional questions? Yes, ma'am.
So it's clear that hiring an AI is here to stay and only going to advance further. What type of messaging is happening to candidates to reassure them that there's nothing we can do to get around this? You're applying in mass, which means that now we're getting more applications. Small businesses, can't keep up. So we need to use some level. What type of messaging is happening to candidates to sort of guide them in the right direction of what they can do, and also sort of a peek behind the curtain? We're still doing human-based hiring practices like that.
So I think that one of the real important messages that come out of that particular DICE report, the Trust Gap report, is that the best process or the best practice that's being implemented today are companies that are very transparent on exactly every stage of their hiring process and how AI is implemented inside of it and where the human is in the loop. And being very, very clear, very upfront as to exactly how that works for their company. Great question. Yes, ma'am. I think there is. Actually, so the question, if everybody didn't hear it, is there any way to circumvent the bias that's being introduced by AI? So it's very interesting to me. Amazon, actually multiple years ago, even preceding generative AI, or at least ChatGPT, did create an automated screening system. And they recognized that it introduced bias. And so they immediately took it down. They disabled it. They no longer use that particular system anymore. I would say on the DICE side, we have this button that you press that essentially creates an unbiased filter for all of your screening inside of the system. What does that do? It basically anonymizes the names. It takes off the pictures. It literally takes off educational institutions' names that might be associated with black universities and colleges or any other areas that could introduce bias. So it immediately anonymizes a lot of information, but it still leaves the information that's necessary for the actual matching process itself. Technology skills, the level of the degree that you receive, those kind of things. But it literally anonymizes names, pictures, and important institutions.
Last question right here.
Yes?
Has there been any data collected that there may be an increase in impaired job fair participation with people looking for more human touch?
Actually, that's pretty interesting as a question, we see a large interest in that on the ClearanceJobs platform. We do a number of different career fairs every single year. I'd say we're still stuck on the Dice side, where the career fairs are not that popular. They're popular for certain very high demand occupations or skill sets, like, for example, AI. But I would say we're seeing a growing demand for it in ClearanceJobs, less so in terms of Dice. And I think it's because a lot of people just have a stigma around career fairs on the Dice side from the technology domain. They think that's too old-fashioned and too last generation. But in ClearanceJobs, it's actually picking up. Well, I think that was the last question, Lindy. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.